You are watching Omnis Protocol. I am Charles, also known as Omnis, and we are back with another Star Wars Shatterpoint battle report. This week, I am playing Hunter and Ahsoka from the core box. So it's Hunter, Shaak Ti, and ARF Troopers with Shaak Ti, Pawns, and 7 Scorch. And I'm facing off against Nate. Nate is playing the Jyn box and the Cassian box as is. Recently picked those up. Really wanted to get them on the table. They are really fun boxes to play out. So, honestly, had a lot of fun with the game. Was really thankful that Nate was up for a game and was cool with me recording. So let's go ahead and dig right into the game, shall we? All right. We are playing Sabotage Showdown. That is because Nate won priority, and that was his mission. I think it might be a little bit of some personal preference on his part. His first poll is Bodhi. Bodhi. And so here, I have a decent amount of killing power, so there's obviously a little bit of worry about what you put up first. And you really don't want to get stuck utilizing your Bazin Chirrut right now. And so I think reserving does get to be a little bit of a risk, because if he pulls Shatterpoint or Bazin Chirrut, he loses a lot of potential from his list. And the nice part about pulling Bodhi first is it does allow you to dash someone forward, whether that's Cassian, K2SO, or Jyn, that potentially puts them in better positions for wounding triggers. And so he elects to dash forward Jyn a bit, and that gives himself a dash because she is a spy, and then he advances onto the point and hunkers. So he didn't get to use his other ability because he wasn't already controlling the objective that he was on. And so that would have been one argument for reserving. And then I immediately pull Shatterpoint here, which is really about as good as you could possibly ask for in this particular situation. And what I kind of think about here is that there's a world where I could score 4 with 7 Scorch because of supporting Fire Dash. And so I'm kind of thinking, can I get myself into a situation where I can kill Bodhi and end up with 1 of 7 Scorch getting over to the other objective? And so you can see here, we are playing around with the dual camera setup. So you can kind of get some time seeing the side view of models. Obviously, Nate, this is new teams for him, so Nate hasn't had a chance to paint these yet, but I appreciate, I love when people are just experimenting with new boxes for them. Even though Jyn and Cassian obviously get a lot of play community-wide. All right, so the idea is that I wanted to end up with that 7 Scorch who's in the middle, potentially going and hitting that ladder to come down and take control of that other point. But it's looking really tight, and so what I was kind of going is, can I potentially hold back and or can I forgo the movement action to just focus to kind of increase the odds of this whole thing happening? Because they got to dash first because of the Shatterpoint and then dash because of their own ability. And so that really allowed them to get extra distance up the board, which was helping me in a big way. So first one is the one who is up higher shooting at Bodhi. And so he has 3 blocks. Hunter modifies 1 fail into a hit. My 3 expertise becomes 2 hits and a block to fail. And so I end up going 3 down. The key thing here is it does give me the ability to double shove Bodhi because he's steadfast. It means that I can at least get him off the point, but I am risking damage a little bit. But the thought process here is, at least if I shove him off the point, that means that I do get to score both, even if I don't get the kill. And so We weren't necessarily sure if one shove was going to get him off. It did look like it barely got him off. I wasn't sure that was going to end up being the case. And so now I'm resolving supporting fire dash. And I do end up hitting the ingress point. And so that does get that model over onto the other objective. So first goal here, one of the things that we were talking about in this moment is my community generally does play with, you can go halfway down a ladder or halfway up a ladder as long as it is a full length ladder and the ladder isn't broken up into two parts. But I think there are communities who play that differently, that you cannot go halfway. And so that is a really just good conversation to have in general. You know, especially if you go to a convention or something, just so everybody's on the same page. All right, so now the other one is shooting at Bodhi because he got pushed out of range, pushed out of melee. I got the first one into melee because I wanted to remove the hunker. And so still ended up with 4 blocks, so I'm going 3 down. So I do 4 damage and strain, which takes Bodhi down to 1. And so now I'm going to do, yes, more explosives. And because I would like to get the wound right now. And so 5 dice, expertise for damage. And do get the expertise, so that will wound Bodhi. But that does mean that I'm going to have to deal with a Cassian trigger here. I think there was probably a world where if he had utilized the Jyn movement to hit an ingress point, probably could have gotten her just a little bit further forward and she would have been able to walk to that objective and disrupt my scoring 4, which is a really important play. But I think his positioning was going a little bit more towards either direction, not really knowing where Jyn was going to need to go next. And so I obviously got a little lucky there with being able to get Shatterpoint or 7 Scorch to start. And so, you know, in almost any other situation, Bodhi has a good chance of not getting shoved off the point by Ahsoka or Pawns. And so, you know, Arfs and Hunter would potentially both have like a really hard time getting to him, probably Shakti as well. So there's probably only 2 cards in the deck that were reliably taking that point. Yeah. All right, and I elect to hunker. All right, and then he reveals Jyn. And so he has the option of either dashing Jyn or dashing a supporting unit. Because it doesn't look like we ended up quite in range for her to start off making an attack. So what we started talking about, like, is it worth reserving here? If he pulls Baze and Chirrut, he almost certainly is going to kill 7 Scorch or Shatterpoint. If he hits Rebel Pathfinders, even if he doesn't kill 7 Scorch, he's definitely guaranteed to take a point. But then he pulls Cassian, which is not a terrible pull here, but I think it is certainly not what he was hoping for. Yeah. But we were talking about it. One of the plus sides here is it does allow him to move Jyn into a position where she can start off being able to punish 7 Scorch. where she could start off being within range 4, so she can put a 4 dice into them, or sorry, a 5 dice, and then dash forward and then shoot him again, probably focus shoot him again. And so that's a nice option for the list at the very least. And so now he's just kind of figuring out what is the plan for Cassian, because we do have hunkered, steadfast 7 Scorch. And so he was kind of thinking, like, does he try to get to the other side and shove him off? And then we realize that he could advance, hit the ladder, go up. And still utilize the normal movement to go down. Because I believe the revenge trigger got used on Cassian to get him further up the board. So his first dash was able to get him to the ladder, and now he can kind of walk behind. So he's going to definitely take my back point, and he can try to get some damage into 7 Scorch. All right. 3 crits, 3 hits for Cassian. And I end up with 4 blocks crit to hit. So that's going to be 2 steps down for Cassian. And so it would be 3 damage pin, but they are protection, so they take 2 damage, but he is going to take that back point from me. And so that'll be a score of 3. I pull ARF Troopers next. I'm totally happy with this play, as I know the main objective that I want to take back right now is the one that Cassian just took, and I know that the ARFs can definitely take it back. Initially, I'm thinking, wow, do I just focus and shoot him? And because they can just use the defensive maneuver and come up afterwards. I was just kind of double checking, because I knew they had got a bonus when they're holding, or like when they're hunkered, and I couldn't remember if it was defense or offense off the top of my head. And I was about to focus and shoot them, and then we forgot that because Cassian moved to Jyn and she was a spy, they would both be hunkered. And so in that case, that changes the math enough for me that I'm thinking at the very least I need to engage him with one of them, which means I probably want to engage him with both of them. Because now I'm thinking, do I defensive maneuver up and focus and pull them down? But, in retrospect, I think there's a conversation here where I just have one walk forward, or like one climb up and the other one stay down, and have the back one shoot and shove him, and then have the other one but what I elected to do was to just defensive maneuver them both up, and then have them focus, and then they're just going to punch. They have they only lose, I think, 1 die, but they have slightly better expertise, actually. And so Cassian has 4 blocks. And so I go 2 down on the first one. And so it's 2 damage pin shove. And so we do end up with a shove angle. And then we're going to go ahead and now shoot with the other one. So it goes up to 8 dice. And Hunter turns a fail to a hit. And then 2 blocks, crit to fail. So I end up with 6 damage, shove, expose because I was reapplying pin. So it doesn't get a wound, but I do get a lot of damage on him. Hunter, Hunter, it's part of why I like ARF so much with Hunter, because they just roll a decent amount of dice and generally add up successes nicely. And when you convert one fail to a hit, and so they're just always kind of going one step further down the tree than they probably deserve to, that's just such a big deal. You know, another interesting thought would have been is if I had, instead of focusing, one of them moved towards the ladder on the other side and tried to set up a Rule 17. But, all right, so I take back the point, I score 4, and then he pulls Jyn, and Jyn is going to start off rolling 5 dice into Sev. But then I'm realizing I'm looking down at how close he is to Bodhi, and I'm like, wait a second, I can't have a hunker token. And so I remove the hunker token now. So it does mean that I had too many dice for the time that Cassian shot at him. And I was frustrated with myself a little bit in that moment because I could have easily chosen a hunker direction that would not have engaged Bodhi. And so it ends up going 2 steps down. I'm always sad, when these characters get like 3 crits on 5 dice against these guys who can often like block 3 plus have a crit to hit. And it's like, and so then Jyn gets a damage through and then does her free dash, I Rebel, to get onto the point, and then she's going to melee them. And I end up with just 1 block in this particular case, but she doesn't roll particularly well either. And so it's, despite my bad defense roll there, still ends up just being 2 damage after protection. And because she actually has 2 movements there, essentially, she is able, because he didn't focus, which means that she takes my back point again. And so he scores 3. I pull pawns here, and I'm thinking, well, actually, that's totally fine because pawns can guarantee to take the point from Jyn, because pawns can dash Ahsoka onto it and then get onto it himself. And I'm realizing that pawns is within range 5 of the ARF troopers, and so pawns can aim and shoot at Jyn, and then coordinated fire or supporting fire dash onto the point. And so he is going to go ahead and focus, and so he gets to roll 7 dice. Unfortunately, a pretty bad block roll, just 1 block. Not a... And so I do end up, looks like I have 4 successes after the 1 block. Again here, I'm actually forgetting about the Rule 17 potential, where it might have been worthwhile to try to get within range 3 of Sev, and so that, I could just end up also having Sev put a 5 dice into her. And so She does dash back onto the point. He supporting fire dashes forward. And so I take back that point and score 4 again. But it's kind of looking like it's going to be hard for him to win struggle 1. So I think he's starting to switch to, okay, what's my plan for the next struggle? And I think this is one of the things with Sabotage that gets really hard to give up a struggle at any point, because when you're losing struggle 1, there's only one objective that you're not currently fighting over. And so this mission, just in particular, with only having 7 objectives, makes it much harder to give up on struggle 1 at any point, because, you just end up going into struggle 2 with your opponent still controlling most of the objectives. And so he's got a Jyn and Cassian activation, so he gets to refresh a force. And so here is definitely when I was playing, I was like, man, what is the right play for Jyn and Cassian right now? Because if you're giving up the struggle, there is a possibility that you save the 7 Scorch wound for the next struggle. Yeah, I think, in retrospect, I think an interesting play, obviously, we didn't know that Jyn and Cassian were coming up. But if Jyn had actually dashed back towards the middle with her expertise movement, that it could have set up for Jyn and Cassian killing 7 Scorch, and then he scores 4, and maybe that, gets him back in the game a little bit easier. Yeah, there's definitely a world where that could be possible. Because Ahsoka can only get to 1 point, but then Jyn and you'd potentially have at least one of Jyn or Cassian on that point. So, yeah, I think that could have been an interesting play in retrospect, but you don't know for sure that you're getting Jyn and Cassian next, even though the odds are reasonable. But I think because Jin's on that other point, it's definitely, all right, let's start planning for the next struggle. And so he's actually electing to hunker here, which does always hurt me a little bit. I'm not saying it's the wrong play in his strategy here. I'm just saying in general, hunkering and not attacking with Jyn and Cassian feels bad because they just get so much work done. But I think they're just the math of guaranteeing getting them where he wanted them to be just wasn't quite perfect. So he elected to kind of stack up on the middle, which is always active in struggle 2. And then so I pull Shock T. I know I'm winning the struggle because I'm controlling 4 objectives already. But I'm thinking that I want to reserve Shock T. And in the moment right now, I'm kind of thinking that maybe I give up on struggle 2. And so I'm thinking I want Shock T potentially to start off the 3rd struggle, just with her ability to move people around and clear off whatever point I need. And so, yeah, the thought process was save Shock T. But then I pull 7 Scorch, which is also kind of not the activation that I wanted there. And so now that I've got a 7 Scorch activation, again, I'm thinking I don't necessarily, winning this struggle is not a priority to me, or winning the next struggle. And so I'm just I guess I'm just going for wounds. Just try to put Cassian in a spot where he has less models that can potentially get onto objectives because they've already been wounded. And so what I'm thinking is, can I utilize 7 Scorch to try to kill Cassian and Jyn? And my first thought was, I'm okay, can I just create a situation where I get the pin off of them, get some healing done on them, and I kill Jyn and Cassian? And I second guess myself. Originally, I was I want to attack Jyn. And then I changed my mind and say I want to attack Cassian. And I think that was a mistake. We'll kind of see here. I mean, I definitely get plenty to finish off the 2 health that Cassian has. And so I end up doing 5 damage strained pin. And part of the problem with this play is that I'm going to gain a momentum, which means that Jyn is going to heal and she's going to move. I wasn't quite factoring in. So I thought the reason why I changed the target is that my concern was with where I was positioning them, that there were places to move to block line of sight. And so I was at first like, oh, if I kill Jyn, that there's these spots to move Cassian to that are going to block LOS. But honestly, there was a spot for Jyn to move to as well. And the fact that Jyn gets to heal, and there were more status effects on Cassian. And so I think in retrospect, I should have shot at Jyn and gone for that kill and accepted that, because I think, trying to remember, yes, Cassian was pinned, so he couldn't move. So yes, I definitely should have shot Jyn. That was actually like a totally silly play on my part. I definitely forgot. In the moment, I forgot that he was pinned. So yes, I should have absolutely shot Jyn first, because honestly, this was a really good play on Nate's part. He saw the direct play, because you don't get to block line of sight in Shatterpoint that often. And just good play. Gets Jyn outside of line of sight. So here I just decided to take a shot at Baze and Chirrut to soften them up. And I mean, that's working out to my favor. So I end up doing 5 damage strain pin. So yeah, I get a lot of damage in there, which always feels good to soften them up to make it so they're an easy wound kind of whenever you want. Yeah, I still, my gut is here on the rewatch is that I should have focused on killing Jyn, and then maybe left Cassian pinned and still shot at Baze and Chirrut, but gone for the Jyn wound. But so I win the struggle, and I'm now taking the Cassian bomb damage, which is everyone but Hunter, because I forgot to do Hunter's movement both times he activates his primaries. I guess I've just been on a little bit too much of a Hunter break. That ability just was not on the top of my mind. All right, so we reveal the next one, and of course the middle is active. And so he's going to take the setup where it's the objective where K2SO is already contesting, Baze and Chirrut are on the middle, and then there's the objective that has pawns and Ahsoka. And so he pulls Rebel Pathfinders next. And yeah, I agree with his choice in general here of take the one where you've already got K2SO locking down the point, but the problem is kind of he doesn't have a great way of taking the point from pawns and Ahsoka, like outside of the Shatterpoint. So it rolls for priority. And thankfully it is K2SO's point, so he knows he's already going up 3. And just for information's sake, the Shatterpoint effect is now Force Refresh. And so here we realized I was looking over at his deck and I was like, wait a second, you feel like you're short a card. And so I have him check, and he forgot to put the Shatterpoint into this deck. So that's what we're fixing right now, is just get the Shatterpoint in there. I mean, it only hurts him in this particular case. So not a huge deal for me, but yeah, definitely want to go ahead and get that added for him. I've heard some communities, like if you go to a tournament and you do not have your Shatterpoint card in the deck, and you realize it mid game, like you forfeit the game. I was like, oh man, that's rough. I get that it's strict by the rules, but that's rough. I'm not sure I could do that to somebody. So, here it's just kind of a question of like, how does he want to get good work out of the Pathfinders now? The plus side is that Seven Scorch didn't get wounded, and I got some healing done on them because they ended up taking a heal action and went far enough down the tree once to get a couple of heals. So now Seven Scorch are not, at least not an easy wound. And I think that's actually a really important thing in this particular metagame. And take in general, like Cassian, that he really in most Cassian lists soften up targets, and it's just so much damage spread out all throughout the game, and so it creates heavy wounding pressure, but it's very gradual. It's not usually in big bursts outside of, say, like Shatterpoint, Baze, and Chirrut. And so anything that has ongoing healing effects, and in general, if a lot of your activations heal a couple of points, that you can put yourself in a really good position where you're kind of refilling damage. All right. So here he's gotten the Pathfinders further up the table, and now they're taking shots at Seven Scorch. Back one is shooting first. So I ended with 3 blocks, crit to hit, climb. But pretty good roll for him, and so he's still going to go 3 steps down. And so he's going to do 3 damage and strain here. And so I'm definitely not going to climb here because the strain would kill me. They do not have protection anymore because it is not an active objective. And so here he's going to go ahead and take the second shot. I ended up with 2 blocks crit to hit, so pretty crappy roll. But his roll wasn't great either. He had 2 fails, 2 hits, expertise, crit. So he does elect to take the shove. And so now I do get an Ahsoka trigger, which the plus side here is that at least I can, again, top off characters. And so she gets to heal 3, so she's going to heal 1 off herself and heal pawns. And so I've already been able to mitigate a reasonable amount of like what Cassian's bomb did to the team. But I'm kind of considering, I'm not really sure where I want Ahsoka to be at the moment. But I'm kind of just thinking that if another revenge trigger happens, I would like it to be relevant. And so I'm just kind of moving her up so that maybe there's a world where she can jump onto that objective, but keeping her where she's at least on that on the active objective still. So I roll expertise, and so that's going to be the middle. And so now I'm looking at it, and I got both of my primaries left. And I've got Hunter, so it's Hunter and Ahsoka left. So there's a world of like, hey, am I just trying to do I just go ahead and do Shock T now? Because I'm like, man, Bajan Schroeder have already been softened up, and we know that he hasn't done his Shatterpoint cards. If he wants to do them again, I would definitely like to get them wounded before he has another chance to activate them. And so I decided to go ahead and do Shock T here. There's a little bit where I'm wondering, like, well, if I'm just doing Shock T anyway, should I have done her instead of 7 Scorch? But now I'm thinking, well, it's the start of the objective. She can definitely clear off the middle. And so here I was just double checking that Cassian is indeed wounded, so she can do a full advance. So she goes and hits the ladder. And then she's going to do lightsaber to face on Baze, I believe that is. And bad block roll for Baze. 1 block. But my roll wasn't great either. I had quite a bit of fails, and he didn't roll expertise, so I don't have any... I can't use her reactive. So he's only blocking 1. The 2 expertise is a crit and a hit to crit. And so I'm only going to, even though he rolled 1 block, I'm going to go 2 down the tree, which is pretty normal for Shock T if you've played her. She really consistently goes 2 down the tree, but she doesn't often do a ton more than that. But she can do 4 damage. And so here I'm thinking, let's just spread around the wounds. I try to do this when I'm playing against Cassian, that I want to minimize the ability for... I want to minimize the opportunity for him to get good Cassian triggers. And so let's just get characters wounded. And so them moving doesn't really matter. But there is so I gain a momentum, so that does mean that Jyn gets to heal more. There is a world here where I don't get the wound and I should just go in the middle and leave them low so that they're dealing with being like pinned and strained. And so Cassian Trigger elects to have Jyn hit the ladder and go up. And I think she is engaged with Shock T. So here what I'm going is, am I willing to force repulse here? I'm taking the objective either way, but I was kind of thinking, I'm not sure I need this force for anything else later on. And at least if I get Baze and Shrewd off the point when they Shatterpoint, they've got to think about moving, right? You know, there's just sometimes the math works out where, like, if you let them just stay there, then maybe they can heal off the status effects easier. They can, you know, focus and stay on the steadfast side. You know, there's a few plays here and there that I would just prefer to complicate. And so I am going to go ahead and force repulse, even though 2 of the models are already. And so the first thing I was checking here is Ahsoka within? And from this angle, it looked like she was in. And it was my one concern there was, I'm like, if I'm repulsing Jyn that direction, she's potentially starting off right on top of an objective, basically. And yeah, I feel like I should have to repulse Ahsoka here. I'm not sure if I guess from this angle, it definitely looks like she's further away. So maybe she's not within range too. At the other angle, I definitely thought was in range 2 and was kind of surprised why I didn't do it, but it's a usefulness of the angles. All right, so I was able to score 3, which takes us back to 0, and then he rolls for priority, and it is the objective that has Ahsoka and pawns on it. I'm just kind of eyeing some potential movement directions. So he does have a force left, so even if he pulls K2SO, he does have the option to reserve K2SO and activate Bayesian Chirrut anyway. And so I think this is why he's kind of going like, what am I doing with them? So it was K2SO, he's reserving, and then pulls Shatterpoint. And really nice for him here is it's a force refresh with the Shatterpoint, which kind of gives him exactly what he needs. And so he's able to refresh 2 force while still removing both status effects. So here we just got him kind of deliberating a little bit, like what exactly is the plan here? Obviously wants to go for the priority objective. And so there's always this, like when you're playing Bayesian Chirrut, you're always thinking about, okay, which side do I want to be making attacks on? And do I need to use the movement ability now, or do I need to wait until I flip my card to get the movement ability that I want? And I still do not remember which side has which movement ability, and I have to check every time. I'm sure there are people who have memorized that. I probably should. For some reason, that just hasn't stuck in my brain yet. And so he's starting to think that maybe he does refresh the 3rd force and keeps pin on. And so I think here we ended up having to do just a little bit of a correction. Because you only get to reposition with one of them if you're going that route. And so he's just realizing, he's like, okay, I can't refresh the 3rd force. I have to remove the pin. And because he wants both of them to be on that point. And so it does work out with his force, but he's at 0 for the K2SO activation. But he has Jyn, so that's totally okay. Now he's flipping sides, and he does have to be in melee, and so he's not on the impact side, but it is Shatterpoint, so he does get +2 dice from Cassian, which means he is going to roll 9 dice. All right. Chirrut is attacking. Here, I think the mistake is he's choosing to attack Ahsoka. I think it was because Ahsoka, I think there was concerns about the angle of shoves for pawns possibly not getting off the point. And so elected to go after Ahsoka, but just kind of didn't factor in just how good Ahsoka is at getting back onto the point. And I got a little bit lucky here that I rolled 3 expertise and get the bonus expertise, and so I perfectly get the heal and jump. And so this almost backfired on me if I hadn't rolled as many expertise. Now, I mean, maybe if I had rolled more blocks, it would have been fine, but it ended up where I was able to heal the pin and then get back on the point. And now the other one is also attacking her. And I basically end up with the exact same roll. And so he's going to go 4 steps down. So it ends up with 4 damage, push twice, pin. I could do too fast for you, but I do want to conserve the force. So I elect to heal the pin and then jump back onto the point. And so this is kind of a big turning point here. I definitely think there's a world where you just put the attacks into pawns and accept the kill. I think you can probably set that up where they both stay on the point, and like even if Ahsoka gets to make a 6 dice attack into you, probably doesn't shove them off, or you just go for an angle where you think, you know, gets pawns off the point. But yeah, I think attacking Ahsoka there was definitely not the right play, and that backfired pretty heavily. And so I pull Hunter next. And here I'm thinking, I don't have very many ways of going after the back point. And I'm kind of thinking like Hunter can potentially make 2 attacks. But then I just realized the whole math of how this would have to play out, because I had forgot to move him off of either of the, after either of the times that the primary is activated, that he just was a little too far back to do some cool things. So I'm just thinking, hey, let's just go beat up on Baze and Chirrut. Let's see if maybe I can facilitate getting a second wound on them before their card comes up in the second shuffle, because I think that just always puts Baze and Chirrut in a bad spot. So 3 blocks crit to hit. 2 expertise. And so I just end up with 1 success going through. And they are, yeah, I can't really shove them. So I just really nice them for 1 damage. And then I'm going to focus. I did get a dash off the expertise, which is why he moved. And then focus and stab again, see if I can get some more damage on them. 2 blocks crit to hit. And I just rolled a ton of expertise here. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, so I still end up with only 2 steps down the tree because of the crit mitigation. So not a great offensive turn for me there, but I'm just happy to have some damage on them. 6 expertise was just a lot for a single roll. It's funny when I would definitely have preferred a fail to an expertise. And so I was just tons of potential movement. And so what I ended up having him use the reposition to hit the ladder and go up and try to like reinforce the middle to make life difficult. And so then the middle becomes the priority point. And so we know his last card is K2SO. So there's now some problem here of like, K2SO doesn't really have a way to make 2 attacks. And so his ability to take the middle point is now extremely difficult. So now he's using, why does she get a blaster and I don't? Man, the Rogue One stuff has such great names on the ability cards. So dashes towards Cassian. And then hits the ladder for a little extra movement. And then gets to heal the pin off of Cassian. Yep. And so here I think the plan is that he's going to make attacks on either Hunter or Shaak Ti and at least try to soften someone up. But it's definitely in a bad spot where you're like, wait a second. I'm only controlling 1 point. It's not the priority point, and not sure that you can take a point. And so here is just which character does he want to attack here? He's going to elect to attack Shaak Ti, just slightly worse defenses overall. Just 3 blocks for Shaak Ti. He ends up, after expertise, is crit, hit, damage. So he's going to go 2 steps down the tree. And so he's going to shove Shaak Ti off the point. I think that was probably a situation where I would have considered not shoving Shaak Ti the second time, because she might now be on that other objective, which is not really what you want. And so priority roll, it is the point that Pons and Ahsoka's holding. And so here I'm kind of like, what am I doing with Ahsoka now? She is the last activation. I do need to reveal the card, which I finally do. I was just like, I knew I had to activate her. So I'm like, do I just focus and attack? And that is what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to focus and roll 7 dice into Chirrut. I was just double checking if there was any triggers I needed to think about here. And so I am going, he just reshuffled, so he has force now. So I am thinking, like, if I get the kill here, there is potential extra K2SO shenanigans. But I'm like, yeah, we'll suffer the consequences. So go ahead, roll into them. They end up with 2 blocks crit to hit, which isn't really functional than 2 blocks at the moment. So I'm still going to full tree here, but I have so much damage on her, I'm actually thinking about doing the heal side. And so what the top tree only does 4 damage, but I think I'm okay with that at the moment. And that I'm just going to shove Chirrut further away and heal back 4 damage on Ahsoka. And so 4 damage, 4 heals, and a jump. But I start thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? I actually want to heal 2 off of Shaak Ti first. Just because Ahsoka also gets to heal from the various wounds. And so I'm like, it's like, but Shaak Ti getting closer to full is a big deal. And then I have Ahsoka jump up to kind of reinforce the middle. And then nothing important to do with the last force. And so I score 3 there. Now I get to refresh. And priority objective is the objective with Pons and possibly Shaak Ti. I don't know, haven't checked yet. And he pulls Cassian. Cassian definitely has the potential to take that point. I mean, I still don't think shoving Pons off would be terribly difficult. I do at least have Baze and Chirrut low enough that he can't do I've done terrible things because he would kill them himself. So that's a plus. So here he's just kind of figuring out who he wants to potentially give the dash to. And so still got some deliberation. So he is definitely going to activate Cassian. Strain gets removed because he had been wounded before. Jyn gets a dash, which lets him move up the ladder. Okay, and then this is the dash part for Cassian. It's funny, in the moment, I'm not actually remembering who he attacks here. I feel like it. He's got the choice between Shaak Ti or Pawns. And so now he's talking about using his normal movement, and he's wondering if he thinks he can clear that piece of terrain. I agree that he can, so we move him over so he's on the objective. And so then he's going to punch Shaak Ti. Shaak Ti does get an auto expertise from Ahsoka. I end up with 4 blocks crit to fail. But unfortunately, he's mostly crits in this particular case. I don't know how it feels for you guys, but I swear every time I feel like I get a really good block roll, that it always ends up being in a situation where they just roll a bunch of crits. So it ends up being 4 damage, 2 shoves, so definitely getting Shaak Ti off that point. And so, small consequence of not getting the wound on them, but still probably okay. And Jyn is totally back to full because I got a momentum. So the middle is the double score. I've now got 7 Scorch. And so now I'm wondering, can I close things out? And what's the plan to do that? There's just a lot of potential triggers. And so I'm like, and so here, like, I'm not sure how I feel about 7 Scorch getting to taking the point from the Rebel Pathfinders, because there is the frustration of like when you're playing a Cassian list with K2SO, all he has to do is get to an objective to prevent you from taking it back. And so now I'm resolving some dashes on 7 Scorch. Just getting tokens cleaned up for 7 Scorch. I'm just going, I do not want to be engaged at the moment. And so here I'm thinking I want K2SO further away from the situation. And so I'm having the first 7 Scorch, who's on kind of the left side of the screen, shoot at K2SO first, trying to get him away from Baze and Chirrut. And he just ends up with 1 block. So Nate is not getting great block rolls this particular game. And so it looks like I'm going to go 4 down. So I'm going to do 5 damage, strain, shove, pin. And I was kind of thinking that I was going to plan to kill K2SO. But now I think I actually shoved him to a spot where now the other 7 Scorch can't see him. I did get him outside of range 4 of Baze and Chirrut, but now I can't shoot at him. So my thought process originally was shoot K2SO twice, kill K2SO, and then use the bomb to kill Baze and Chirrut. And so that messed up that plan slightly, but I'm always impressed when line of sight impacts Shatterpoint. So now I'm going to go ahead and shoot at Baze and Chirrut to finish them off. Baze and Chirrut ends up with 5 blocks crit to hit. So he has a good block here, but it's just not quite enough. I only needed 1 damage. And so I'm going to take the 1 damage and shove. Just in case I need the movement. I don't think that I do, but... And so now I'm going to gain a momentum. He does have a Cassian trigger here, but the problem is now you've got K2SO is pinned, so he's not moving anywhere. What he's asking is, can Jyn reposition, hit the ladder, and be on the point? And I was like, it's entirely possible. So he does elect to go ahead and do that. And which he does pull off all of that positioning. And so she does get to go down, and she is on the point. So currently has 2 on the point. So I do have to end with 3. But believe that I did forget about supporting fire dash on the first shot, but that's fine. They still have their move action. And so just have 7 Scorch both walk onto that point now. And so that goes 3-2, which will close out the game. So overall, honestly, I really like this Hunter Ahsoka list. I think I will definitely play it again. I feel like I certainly did not play it optimally. I missed Hunter triggers. I think there was some situations where I could have used Rule 17, but maybe I just need some more practice with the list. Obviously, I don't think this was, I think, the first game for Nate playing Cassian and Jyn. So I think there were some subtle movements where he could have potentially gotten more out of the Cassian triggers early, but I was just putting a lot of offensive pressure onto his list that kind of prevented some key plays there. And I think my order deck was definitely leaning in my favor that direction. But overall, very cool matchup. I think now I'm not saying that you can execute things exactly the way that this game came out, but this isn't a little bit of an example of Cassian is a very potentially beatable character if you can get some couple of early wounds before the revenge triggers really deny you points. Then the later wounds are going to be more impactful, and he's not going to have as many characters to get onto key points. And so if you can get the wound train rolling right away, you can kind of overpower a Cassian list. But there's a lot of interesting target prioritization, because as you saw, I think I messed that up by targeting Cassian when I should have targeted Jyn. But overall, cool matchup. Nate, I really appreciate you playing the game with me. I definitely think you should dive into this list more. I know right after this game, he played the list, but swapped the Pathfinders for Commandos. And so I think that is a really fun list. That's a list that Sin was enjoying. And I think you can get a lot of work out of Jyn and Cassian together. And I think Jyn's still a little underrated, and a lot of people fall back on Kanan and Leia, which I think are great with Cassian, but I have a lot of fun playing Cassian and Jyn, and she can do some good work. But we'll go ahead and close things out there and just say the most OP thing that you can do is forget your Hunter triggers, but he's still great. Later, nerds.